Hi everyone, my name is Sulek and welcome to Lesson 1 of Harmonium and Vocal, a beginner's course. This is the first lesson of a 5-lesson course and it's titled Getting Started. In this lesson, I'll be explaining the workings of the harmonium, the 7-note scale, and also giving you some simple starter techniques to get you playing and singing straight away. Okay, let's have a look at the harmonium itself in part 1 of this lesson. Okay, so first of all, this is a simple and conventional harmonium which is quite popular amongst beginners and intermediate players. There are of course several different types of harmonium, but the outside of every harmonium is essentially made of 3 parts. That's the bellow, the stoppers, which you can see down here, and then the keys on the top. Okay, let's look at the function of each one. The bellow is the mechanism for pumping the air through the harmonium. And then next are the stoppers, of which there are 2 kinds. The larger ones are just the normal stoppers, and if I pull them out you can see them here. And then the alternate smaller ones, which are known as sustainers or drones. And then of course the black and white keys are played in order to create the sound. So you have the bellow, you have the stoppers, and you also have the keys on the top. Okay, let's see how the bellow, stoppers and keys interact with each other in the next part of this lesson, getting a sound. Okay, so first of all I'll open the bellow. Now I'm right-handed, so that means I'll be pumping the bellow with my left hand because it will free up the right hand to play the keys. Now this harmonium is what's known as a double folding bellow, which means that you can open it on both sides depending on what hand you're going to use to play the bellow. Now of course I'm a right-hander, that means I'm going to be playing, as I said, the keys with my right hand, so I'm going to open the left side of the fold here on the bellow, and it's just got a clip there, and that's opened it up. Okay, now notice that I didn't immediately start pumping the bellow to show you how it worked. And it's very important that you realise early in your playing not to pump the bellow without playing the keys. If you do, you could damage your harmonium as excess air has nowhere to escape once you put it in, and eventually your harmonium will develop an air leakage which can be really hard to find. So don't blow the bellow without playing the keys. That's a very important rule. Okay, so I'll open the first larger stopper, which is of course for playing, and this is the one furthest to the left. Okay, so you can see here, once again, I'll point out the larger stoppers, the alternates, as I showed you in one of the previous parts. So this one, I'll just call it the first one. It's the one to the furthest left. Okay, and all I'm going to do is push down a key. Okay, now you can see that there are black notes and white notes on a harmonium very clearly. And the black notes appear as either pairs, like you can see here, your pairs on the harmonium, or as triplets or trios. So you can see 3 here, and 3 here. Okay, so there's either a set of 2 or a set of 3. So the note that I'm going to be playing first is the first black note of a set of 2 in the middle of the harmonium. So if you imagine this is like the lower part of the harmonium and this is the higher part, I'm going to be playing here in the middle of the harmonium. And basically by the first of a pair of black notes, I mean the one to the left of the 2. So here's my pair of 2 black notes, okay, not the trio, remember, but it's the pair here. And then the first one, I mean the left of those. And for those of you right now who are familiar with Western music, this is actually known as C sharp, okay? So once again, you get the 2 notes that are roughly in the middle of your harmonium, and the one to the left of that pair is the one that I'm going to be playing. Okay, I'm just going to hold it down with the index finger of my right hand, okay? And if you were left-handed at this point, you would actually be playing with your ring finger, because we're going to go this way up eventually, the harmonium to the right, okay? So, but I'm, as I said, right-handed, so I'm going to just play this with my index finger. And now comes the good bit. You can slowly pump the bellow with a slow, methodical, steady motion that kind of has an underlying tempo. Okay, and like I've done, just try resting your hand on top of the harmonium. So I've put my thumb here, just at the back of the end of the harmonium, and then I'm just pumping the bellow. Now, you can see I've actually put my index finger in the first fold of the bellow, but you can have all the fingers at the back as well. Okay? And then gradually you hold down the note and you just pump the bellow. Okay? And you should be able to hear a sound. Okay? And just keep that bellow nice and slow and steady. Okay, that's great. And now that you've heard the sound of this first stopper, I'm going to show you the sound of the next stopper. Okay, so let's close that one. Close the first one, and by that, again, once again, I mean the furthest to the left. And now I miss one out because this one is what we call our sustainers or our drones. So I'll go to the next big stopper, so I'll leave one out, and I'm just going to pull that out, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So once again, don't blow the bellow, just hold your finger down on the note, remember the first of the pair of black notes, and then gradually pull the bellow at a nice, steady, relaxed tempo. Okay? Nice and methodical, slow and easy. And you can probably tell that the sound is slightly deeper, isn't it? The tone of it is different from the first one. It's a more kind of richer sound, isn't it? Less thinner. Okay, and once you've got the hang of that, and you can get a sound out of your harmonium, you can then let the air come out. You can notice there that I didn't blow the bellow, I just waited for the air to go out, the sound to disappear. I can take my hand off, and I can close the second stopper, and now I'm going to leave one out again, leave one of the drone stoppers or sustainers, and I'm going to open the third largest stopper and see what that one sounds like. Once again, I'm going to play the same note, hold it down, and I'm going to blow the bellow again, and a very similar sound. You can tell, quite same tone there. Ain't nothing much different between that third stopper and the second one that I've just played before. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward. I'm going to leave the air to just come out of the harmonium. Once there's no sound, then I can close that. Let's do the last one now. Okay, so I'll miss another of the smaller stoppers, go to the last one, and now let's play that note. Wow, a very soft kind of sound, isn't it? And this one is a sort of vibrato, isn't it? Yeah? And I'll come to what exactly that sound is later in the lesson. Okay, so let's have a recap. Let me just shut that off. Once again, the first one, and I play that note again, the left one of the two black, hold that down, blow the bellow, and now you can tell the difference between all the sounds on the harmonium depending on the stoppers that we pull out. So this is quite a thin sound, isn't it? Now, let me close that one, open the second larger one, and there clearly you can tell the difference in tone. And then I'll close that one again and open the third larger one. Again, same as the second one. And then the last one is the vibrato stopper, which if I play it, you can tell it's kind of like vibrating the note. And there we go. Those are the 4 larger stoppers on a harmonium. So now we know that different stoppers perform different functions on a harmonium and indeed create different sounds, and that we need stoppers open even to create a sound in the first place. Now let's look at which stoppers we need to have open in order to create a nice balanced sound on your harmonium. I can tell you that this harmonium has 2 sets of reeds. The first stopper opens what is known as the female reed. Stoppers 2 and 3 open the second reed, known as the male reed. Do you remember how the sound of those two reeds, 2 and 3, was a little deeper? So I would say a combination of the male and female reeds will produce an optimum sound for the harmonium. Therefore, I'm going to start by opening those first 3 larger reeds. So once again, number 1 being the furthest to the left, then we miss one out, and there's number 2, miss one out, and number 3. And this is another really good tip for you, that when you start playing the harmonium, the first thing that you should do is pull out the stoppers. Then, of course, the next thing, you can open the fold of the bellow, so you're ready to play. But once again, remember, don't play the bellow yet until you've laid your hand on the harmonium. And then you can play the key that we talked about in the previous section, which was the left of the pair of black keys. So you can hold that down with your index finger, and now gradually you can blow the bellow. And try to keep your sound at a fairly level volume. And of course, in order to do that, you need to keep your bellow as steady as possible. So I'm holding all the fingers outside of the bellow at the moment. You could put your index finger in the first groove there and just pull with your middle and ring finger. And that's your choice entirely. But it's just good to establish a nice, steady sound. And just notice that I'm not pulling my index finger off the note at all. I'm not having any gaps in the sound. I'm just trying to get a nice, steady volume for my harmonium with a steady hand on the bellow. And this obviously takes a little bit of practice, but that's the thing that you want to do straight away. Is open your stoppers, press down a note, and then bring your bellow in and try to keep a nice, steady bellow hand. And you can hear now the rich sound of a combination of 2 reeds. The male reed, which was slightly deeper in tone, and our first stopper, which opened what we call the female reed. It's a combination sound. And there we go, try to keep that as steady as possible and making that optimum harmonium sound. And then let the air go out, leave the bellow alone, take your hand off the harmonium, and we've created a really nice balanced tone on our harmonium with a combination of male and female reed. And so now you've discovered the sounds of both female and male reeds. By the way, I should just say that it doesn't mean that just because it's called a female reed or a male reed, that female musicians just use those reeds and male musicians just use those reeds. We've come to realise that a combination of having both those reeds open produces a nice, balanced, optimum sound. Now we'll look at the other stoppers and the functions of what they are. So in this part, I'll deal with the function of the other stoppers and what they do. So let's open the final larger stopper. And we did this already and we found out how it sounds. But let me just tell you a little bit more about the function of it. So we'll pull out the stopper. Once again, just pull out the bellow. Don't play anything yet, just keep your finger down. And now once you've got your finger down on the harmonium, you can play. And you can hear that sort of vibrato or vibrating sound. Okay, I'm just going to let the air come out of the harmonium there because you've heard what that sounds like, and that's actually called a tremolo. Okay, it's a tremolo stopper, but it's not very commonly used in accompaniment, so I wouldn't worry about it at all. We can just tuck that in. We're not going to be using it for these lessons. We're just going to be using the male and female connecting stoppers. Okay, but then of course there are the smaller stoppers which I haven't explain too much in detail. Suffice to say that they are sustainers or drones. Okay, now in order to hear those, very commonly you'd have to open the larger normal stoppers that just allow the harmonium to play. Now the sustainers or drone stoppers, well, they just essentially hold a certain note constant throughout play, but not really at all necessary for learning the basics of harmonium. Okay, so let's just open one. So if I open that first smaller stopper, which I've called a sustainer or a drone, and I just play the harmonium, you can see I don't have to play any of the keys in order for the drone to play. And then if I open the second one, there will be another drone. Okay, and then I close that one, and then there's the third sustainer or third drone, and there we go. Okay, so I don't have to actually play anything, and they're used sometimes for accompaniment, and they perform various other functions, but certainly not important for the purposes of this course. Okay, so I'm going to close that, and I don't, as I said, need the tremolo open. So in order to get our optimum sound, as I've talked about, you would be looking at a combination of male and female reeds for a harmonium. Now, the other point I should say is if your harmonium only has one reed inside, okay, so it only has one reed board. I'm not going to open the harmonium and show you those reeds, but they're essentially made of brass or steel brass in this case, and there would be kind of two reed boards, and each of these stoppers would lead to a separate part of the harmonium. You may only have two stoppers if you had one reed instead of this harmonium, which is a double reed. Okay, or indeed no stoppers at all. Some harmoniums are literally like plug and play. You don't have any stoppers, and it's just one reed, and you play the harmonium, and whatever the sound is of that reed will be the harmonium sound that you have. Each harmonium is different, but the double reed harmonium, the one that I'm using here for this lesson course and as part of the demonstration, is actually fairly common. So to give you practice again, we hold down our note that we've established, our Western C sharp, which is the left of the pair of black notes, remember, in the middle of the harmonium roughly. So let me hold that down, and then my left hand on the bellow, and I'm just going to bring that nice optimum balanced sound once again. And yeah, this is the point in the harmonium when you can just enjoy your sound as well. Just relax to it. The minimal sound of one note. Okay? And try to balance it, balance the volume of that, okay, with a steady hand on the bellow. Now, some bellows are a lot more sensitive than others. I'm hardly having to pull this bellow in order to create a nice sustained sound. Sometimes the bellow that you'll use will be less sensitive, and you'll have to put more air in order to get a sound. Every harmonium, don't forget, is different. But as I said, I've tried to pick a nice common harmonium to show you as part of this course. And there you have it, the optimum balanced sound without using the drone stoppers or indeed the tremolo. So we're ready to go forward from here now. Okay, so this is a very brief introduction to another type of harmonium known as a scale changer. This particular one has 3 reed sets. Okay, so just as opposed to female and male, this now has 3 sets of reeds, bass, male and female. And this mechanism here shifts the scale by a few notes in either direction. So you can probably see that it's in the middle, and if I wanted to shift the whole scale down, I could do so, and I can shift the scale up as well. Okay. And the middle scale would normally be the internationally recognized pitch. So that's in the middle right now. You can see there are 4 up there and 4 down. So my kind of knob here is in the middle of the scale changer. Now, the number of reeds, the quality of the reeds, the scale changer facility that I've just shown you, and the overall workmanship bumps up the price of such harmoniums quite considerably. But they are normally very dependable and last pretty much a lifetime if they're looked after. Now, another interesting aspect of this particular model, and it's not true of all scale changes at all, is that this harmonium works only when the stoppers are pushed in, as opposed to what I showed you, the conventional harmoniums, when they're pulled out. Okay, so this harmonium is actually ready to play. But it means it works in reverse of what the conventional harmonium is that I've just shown you. The default position is that the stoppers are pushed in and ready to go. Now, because the mechanics are opposite, if I pull out all the stoppers, or the large stoppers, the ones that would traditionally play the harmonium, these first three larger ones, I've effectively closed the air and no sound can be made if I play the keys. And there you are, absolutely no sound. Even if I'm blowing the bellow and playing the keys, there's nothing because I've closed them. It's in effect reverse to what a normal harmonium would be. Okay, so now if I push in the first stopper, or the one furthest to the left, that would effectively be like opening one air chamber. And now if I play my harmonium, I just play the same note as I did in the last part. And if I play that note, it's the thin female reed sound. And you can hear that quite clearly. And you can tell I hardly need to blow the bellow because it's got a great sustain, and that's another thing that's obviously makes the workmanship on this harmonium slightly better than those of a normal conventional ones. Now, if I close that, okay, basically opening it, and I push the next stopper in and I play, now that's a very heavy sound, isn't it? And we call that the bass sound, okay, or the bass reed. I'm going to close that one off effectively by opening it, and I'm going to open the other reed. And as I was saying, because it's a bass male and female harmonium, this is obviously going to be the male reed, so it's going to be kind of a balance. That's what I'm expecting between bass and female, and that's exactly what I have. It's not quite as deep sounding, is it, as the bass, but it's definitely not as thin as the female one. Okay, so these are the different stoppers leading to different reeds. Why? Because this is a triple reed harmonium as opposed to the conventional double reed that I'm going to be using for the rest of these lessons. But it's just to show you how different types of harmonium are built, and certainly what a more expensive harmonium looks like. Now, of course, the final stopper here would be the tremolo. I don't need to show you that because it's just the same vibrato as on the previous harmonium. And I now have 5 drones or sustainers, and you can tell they're also smaller in size and they're also alternate, and that's quite conventional for a harmonium. You have alternate small and large stoppers, the smaller ones being the sustainers or drones and the larger ones being your normal stoppers that lead to the reed board. So how would I play a harmonium like this? Well, imagine if I've now got all the reeds playing, so I've pushed them all in, and if I take out the bass, then I would have a combination of male and female playing at the same time, and that's kind of what I would like for my particular sound. Now, of course, everyone has their own personal choice. Some people might like all the reeds playing, and you would get a different sound as well. You can tell that the bass has now been added, and that's a rich sound as well, and a rich tone that a lot of people like to play when they play a harmonium. I personally just like the male and female, but this is all personal choice, what you enjoy and the sound that you like to have. But the point about this part is just to show you how different harmoniums are made, the different functions, and how the stoppers can actually work in reverse. So if you do have a harmonium like that, don't be too worried that your stoppers are working in reverse and the mechanics of the harmonium is working in reverse. Sometimes you actually have to push all the stoppers in. So that's a case of just testing which particular harmonium you have. But they essentially have the same functions on each one. Okay, I hope that's explained the workings of a different kind of harmonium, this one being the triple reed scale changer. Well, I hope you were just beginning to get to grips with all that very useful information. Now, let me show you briefly how to address a harmonium properly. Okay, let me start by just explaining how most people put a harmonium in front of them. And what they do is they sit, all well and good, cross-legged, and then they put the harmonium right in front of them. Let me just show you what happens if you do that and you try to play. So my bellow arm comes out like this, and now my hand comes in here. Now you can already see what's happening here. I'm cramping here with my hand, so I'm not able to move freely. But worse still, I'm stretching my left hand here with the bellow. So I'm not really comfortable at all. So one way to overcome those problems, and the way that I address a harmonium, and one that I recommend to you, is to just tilt your harmonium slightly like this. Okay? Now if you see where your bellow hand is, it's nice and relaxed. It just rests on the top of the harmonium. Okay? And then your right hand, which you'll play, of course, if you're a right-hander, would just be able to easily move. And now I've got the freedom of my arm to just be open. And that gives me all the room to play up and down the harmonium wherever I want to play to. And I'm playing nice and relaxed and freely. So, remember, tilt your harmonium in slightly, or outwards slightly. Your bellow hand can then relax nicely on the bellow and just be relaxed, and your hand can sit on the top of the harmonium. And your fingers, actually if you bend them slightly, that would be really good as well when you address the harmonium, so you're able to move freely across the keys. But most importantly, if you tilt the harmonium, then you're able to move your hand freely from one side of the harmonium all the way to the other. And that's the posture that I recommend for addressing the harmonium. Slight angle on the harmonium, relaxed bellow, and relaxed movement of the hand on the keys. So, having looked at posture and the way that we address a harmonium, it's time to look at the 7 main notes of the Indian music scale. Notes in Indian music are known as Swar. There are 7 Shuddha or pure notes in the Indian music scale. Their full names are as follows: Shadaj, Rishab, Gandhar, Madhyam, Pancham, Devat and Nishad. And they're spoken in their shortened form as Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Dha and Ni. And you can see from the diagram that they're written as S, R, G, M, P, D and N. So, having looked at the full names of all those 7 Shuddha, as well as how they're spoken in their shortened form, and written and notated, let me show you where those notes are found on a harmonium in the next part, part 5, which is choosing your sa. Unlike Western music, the starting point, tonic, or sa, can be played anywhere on the harmonium. Every note that follows sa, that's re, ga, ma, pa, dha and ni, will then be related to that starting point. The question, of course, is where should that starting point be? The answer to the question of where the starting point of an Indian scale should be, or where should the sa be placed, is actually not a simple one. The reason for this is because the answer lies in one's own voice. Remember that harmonium is an accompaniment instrument, and therefore one's own vocal range will dictate where they place their sa. It's very much a personal choice. Okay, so we're back with our conventional harmonium that I was showing you at the start of the lesson, and there was a reason why I asked you to play this particular black note with your index finger earlier in the class to get used to playing the bellow on the harmonium. And that's because, and this is really important, I want it to be the starting point or tonic. Okay? What do I mean by the starting point? Well, all I mean is that it's going to be the starting point of your scale in Ascent. And Ascent means moving to the right of your harmonium because the notes get higher and higher in pitch. Okay, so this note right here is going to be our tonic starting point, better known in Indian music as our Sa. And remember, it's known as a Western C sharp. Okay, it's not important because we're doing an Indian music course, but just for those of you who know and those of you who want to know, this is a Western C sharp, and you could just as well, like I was saying, start the Sa or your tonic from any note in the music scale. So, for example, for those of you who know Western music, this is a Western C, the note just below C sharp, the white key, and you could start your Indian scale from there and call that Sa. You could call it A or A sharp or even D. It really depends on where you feel comfortable singing. There's really no rule at all. But I made this my first Sa, as it were, but then learnt to play Sa from lots of different starting points as I became kind of more proficient at the harmonium. But this Sa is a nice place to start. It's balanced, it's great for the development of your harmonium hand, and I found it quite easy to play most pieces starting with this C sharp key or this first black note to the left of this pair of black keys. Okay, so that's going to be our tonic, our starting point, or our Sa. And now, having established that, let's have a go at singing it. Okay, so here comes another landmark moment in your harmonium and vocal, where we're actually going to sing the first note of the Indian scale, the Sa or the tonic. And first I'm going to make sure that I have the first three large stoppers open. So 1, 2, and 3. Make sure I've got my nice balanced optimum sound. So if you do things in order and you get into the habit of that, then you can't go wrong and you won't wonder why you haven't got a sound coming out of the harmonium. Okay, and then opening again my bellow, just in the clip off, so I'm ready to play my bellow. And once again, don't play the bellow until you've played the keys. Okay, so index finger on our Sa, and then just blowing the bellow nice and easy. Okay, so first just listen out for the sound of Sa. Okay, just enjoying its tone and trying to get that in your mind. And then when you're ready, you can begin to think about singing the Swar Sa. Okay, so taking a nice deep breath, keeping the sound going, don't lift your finger off that Sa, and Sa. And once again, really try to tune in to that sound. Once again, deep breath. Of course, don't worry if you can't find that note yet. Okay, just listen to it and try to tune into it as best you can. But don't worry, just relax and just feel the sound. And then once again, nice deep breath and sound of your harmonium and your relaxed voice. Final time, keeping that running the whole way with your index finger, keeping the bellow nice and steady, and then singing the Sa swar once again, the starting point of your scale, the tonic. And here we go. Deep breath and Sa. Just drop out. You don't need to play the bellow then, and you've just played and sung your first note on a harmonium, the starting point of the Indian scale, the tonic called Sa, which we've established as the first black note of the pair in the middle of the harmonium. Okay, good. That's the first swar of the scale, or starting point, better known as Sa. Now, of course, we played that Sa from a certain point on the harmonium, but theoretically, you could play it from anywhere, depending on your own vocal range. So it would be your own personal choice. Now, having established Sa, let's look at how to play all 7 should swar on a harmonium. So as I mentioned before, once we've established Sa, every note is then related to that starting point. Let's now have a look at how we play all the other should notes in relation to that Sa, starting with the first 3 notes after Sa, Re, Ga and Ma. So as you know by now, we've made this note right here, the first of that pair of black, our Sa tonic or starting point. Let's play it again, and then once we have a sound, we'll tune in and we'll sing it. So just relaxing our hand on the bellow, playing our note, and then moving the bellow in and just bringing the sound of our Sa from the harmonium. Tuning in and just listening to it for the moment before we try and sing it. And then once you feel you're ready, you can take a nice deep breath and sing. And if you want to do that again, you can. Nice deep breath once more, singing the tonic, starting point of the scale, and that's letting the air come out of the harmonium. Okay, wonderful. That's your Sa. And now, of course, we need to move in Ascent up the scale. Okay, so our second note, if you remember, is called Re, and it's the pure Re or Shuddh Re that we're interested in, and that is found on the harmonium as the next black note up. So quite easy to remember that. If you've got the black note as your Sa, then you go to the next black note, which is effectively the right of the pair, and that is your pure or Shuddh Re. Okay, so let's have a go at playing that note. And my suggestion is, because you're using the index finger for the Sa, it would be quite natural to use the middle finger for Shuddh Re. So that's one I'm going to place on the Re for the moment. Place my hand on the note, and then bring the bellow in. And you can immediately tell that it's higher in pitch because I've moved in Ascent up the scale. And just hearing the sound. And once you feel like you're connecting to it, you can try and tune into it and sing it. So, deep breath and once again, it would be and just keep your fingers together, but don't drop them too low and accidentally play another note at the same time, otherwise you'll confuse yourself as to what the sound of the note that you're playing is. So this is Shuddha or pure Re, and we'll sing that again. And remember again, just get used to playing the bellow at a steady speed so that the volume of Re remains the same throughout. And we'll go again. And you can let the air come out of the harmonium. Good. Okay, so having played Re, now let's turn our attention to the third note in the scale. And by third note, I mean we've done Sa, Re, and then the third note, which is pure or Shuddha Ga. And that's found by skipping a white note after Re and then playing the next white one immediately after that. Okay, so you can see once again we've got Sa, we've got Shuddha Re, and then Shuddha Ga. Okay, so and my suggestion for that is to bring your thumb underneath and play with the edge of your thumb. Okay, so if you've got Sa with your index, you've got Re with your middle, as we've done, and then I want you to bring your thumb underneath. Okay, so this is the position you're going to be looking at. Okay, you don't want all your fingers over here or all your fingers over there. You just need to balance your hand, but you don't want to be touching any of the other notes for now. Okay, you just want a nice, clean sound. And once you feel that you've got your thumb on that note and all the other the hands aren't all up in the air or all down here, you certainly don't want to make a fist when you play or do anything. You just want to be nice and relaxed, a balanced hand. Once you feel like you're ready, you can then bring the bellow in once more, and you can listen out for that tone again. Okay, and remember, this is the tone of the Ga, the third note in the Indian music scale. And just having a listen to the sound before you tune in and try and sing it. And when you feel you're ready, you can then go for it. Breathing in and Ga. Trying to hear that again, and once you feel like you've got it, you go again and Ga. Good, and once again, aim to be nice and steady, the thumb underneath. Go again and Ga. And one final time with a deep breath. So Ga. And letting the air come out of the harmonium. Okay, great. And now we're on to the fourth note, the final one in this part, which is, yes, you've got it, Ma. Okay, so we've got sa, re, and ga, and now the ma is found by playing the black note immediately after the ga in Ascent. And so you've just played the ga, so now it's going to be the ma, and naturally, if you're playing with the thumb on the ga, then you're going to play with index on the ma. Okay, so that's my suggestion, playing with the index. Remember again, these aren't fixed fingers when you actually play songs and pieces. This is just for the purposes of the ascent and descent of a scale, okay? When we go up and when we go down and we establish all the notes, you know, it's nice to have a certain set of fingers so that we kind of keep some consistency when we're playing, okay? So here we go again. We can use the index finger, hold down the ma, and then gradually you're gonna blow the bellow. So just hearing that tone again. And then when you feel like you're ready, you're gonna do some singing of that note. And once again, deep breath and beautiful. One more time, and remembering to breathe in nicely. Well, there you go. You've now got sa, the starting point, you've got re, you've got ga, and you've got ma. And they are the first 4 notes in Ascent of an Indian scale, with the starting point sa, the second note re, the third note ga, and the 4th note in the scale, ma. Brilliant. So now you've learnt how to play the first 4 should swar of an Indian music scale. That's sa, re, ga, and ma. Let's now complete that 7-note should scale with the final 3 notes, pa, da, and ni. Okay, so we've looked at the first 4 notes in the scale, sa, re, ga, and ma, and pa is the black note immediately after ma. So a reminder that ma was the left of the trio of black notes in the middle of the harmonium, so this was your ma if I just press that down, and then pa is the next black note. So again, quite easy to remember if you know your ma, then the pa just being the middle of the 3 black notes. And because I'm playing ma with my index finger, as you know now, I'm going to be playing my pa generally when I'm playing in Ascent with my middle finger. Okay, so pressing down and again pulling the bellow. That's the sound of the 5th note from sa in the scale, which is the sound of pa. So just hearing that for the moment. And then when you're ready and tuned in, you can try and sing that note. So how would it sound? Once again, tuning in with a deep breath. And one more time, trying to hold that note for as long as you can. Okay, good. And that means so far we've completed 5 notes in Ascent of the Indian scale. That's Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, and now we've added the 5th note, Pa. Okay, so on to the 6th note in the scale, The. Now where's that going to be found? Okay, so we've got our Pa as the middle of the 3 black notes, and in fact very easily, because The is again the next black note in the scale. So you've got Ma with your index finger, you've got Pa with your middle finger, and now The with your ring finger. Very straightforward. Okay, so that is the 6th note in our scale. So quite easy to find, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to play that note down, blow the bellow, so the note's going to ring out there nicely, and hopefully you're getting the hang of being steady with your bellow now as well a little bit more. And then when you're ready once more, you can begin to sing that when you're tuned in. And again, and a nice long breath. And the last time. Now if you're struggling to reach that note right now, don't worry. Just sing it softly if you can, or not at all. But I can assure you, once you develop a sound for Pa, your voice will become nice and strong, and you can then always go back and try the again. Well, we've reached the final Shuddha or pure note of the scale. Yep, you've guessed it. It's the 7th note, which is Shuddha Ni. Okay, and for this, you need to skip a white note immediately after the, okay, so that's the white note immediately after the, and then play the white note after that, which is this one right here. Okay, so just going back again, that's your the, remember, the far right of the set of 3 in the middle of the harmonium, and then you skip a white note, okay? Many people make that mistake and they play the next white note, okay? But you need to skip that if you want to play the pure Ni, and then you will play the Ni, the 7th note, on the final note in an Indian scale with your thumb. Okay, so if you've got your ring finger on the, which we did for the last note, you're going to bring your thumb underneath. Okay, once again, in exactly the same way as you did for Ga. Okay, so the final note, and let's get a sound there. Again, I'll bring the bellow in, nice and easy. Remember, my hand's nice and relaxed on the bellow. I don't want to pump too much air and go crazy. And remember, that bellow is independent of what I'm doing with my note. So I just want to establish my own underlying tempo for that bellow. Okay, and then once I'm tuning in for that Ni, I'm ready. And then I'm going to sing it with a deep breath beforehand. And once again. And try to make this last time a nice deep breath. And here we go. And good. And now you can see the next black note up after Ni, which is this one right here, is exactly the same note as where you started. And in fact, it actually comes down when I press the Sa, or I play the Sa key. You can see its equivalent in the higher scale actually comes down. And this is actually a very good point to tell you the reason why that happens, because it's to do with a contraption here. You won't probably be able to see that on screen right now, but it's a coupler, and it just means that when I play one key down, the key from the higher part of the same equivalent scale plays again, and it just gives it a more rounded and richer sound. But you don't need to worry too much about the function of that right now. Just to know that when you finish playing the Ni, you're back in the same position again, which is the Sa tone. So you've completed effectively one whole scale of 7 notes, and then you're ready to start the next set of notes, because this is what we call our higher Sa, which I'll be talking to you about in much more detail in later lessons. So we have our Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni, and then once we get to the Ni, our next note, the black note, will be our higher Sa, and the scale will start again. Wonderful. Well, I hope you've managed to tune into those notes, managed to play them, gradually starting to build a nice balanced and steady bellow, and we're ready now to go forward from here, having established not just the position of all the notes, but also how to play them nice and cleanly and sing them too. So now you've learnt the position of all 7 Schutzwar from a given starting point, Sa. Let's just have a recap now to make sure that you know them all and that you can still play them. And because it's so important to know your scale of 7 Shuddha Swar, I'm going to recap it and go through it again. And it's vital that you remember your Sa, or your starting point. Whatever you do, don't forget that, because then all the notes will actually follow related to that starting point. Okay? So once again, I tell you that it's the left of the 2 black notes, and that is going to be our Sa for the remainder of these lessons. Okay? And then I'm just going to hold that down and bring the bellow in, as I've done before. The first of the pair of black notes, our tonic starting point, better known in Indian music as Sa. And then once we play it, tune in and get ready to sing. So that will be big deep breath and Sa. And then the second swar of the scale, which is Shuddha Re, or pure Re, and that's found next to the Sa. It's the next black note. We're going to play that with our middle finger. So Re. And then leaving a white note out and playing the next one, you'll be playing Shuddha Ga, remembering to bring the thumb underneath. Ga. Then the first black note of the 3 together, and that's going to be the 4th note of the scale, which is Ma. Ma. Following that, the middle of the 3 black notes, which is Pa, 5th note in the scale. Pa. And having sung Pa, the last of those 3 black notes is Da, and I'm going to play that with my ring finger. So Da. And finally, Ni, by missing out one white key, playing the next one, playing it down again with my thumb underneath. Ni. And then then after that, what's the next black note again? Yep, you guessed it. It's going to be the higher Sa. Once again with index finger. And that is the whole Shuddha or pure register, starting from the middle Sa and reaching the top Sa and playing all 7 Shuddh Swar in between. These 7 Shuddh Swar, Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da and Ni, make up one Saptak or register in an Indian music scale. If we start at our established Sa and finish at Ni, well, that would be the middle scale or Madhya Saptak. Let's play the Madhya Saptak now in Aro or Ascent. Okay, I'll start by playing the harmonium first before we do any singing. So we're going to start again with Sa using your index finger and just getting a sound for that. And then a nice smooth transition to the second note in the scale, that Shuddh Re with the middle finger. So as you lift off the Sa, you then transition to the Re, so you don't have any gaps in the sound of your harmonium. And there you go, the transition to Re with the middle finger. Then you transition again, you lift the Re as you play the Ga, and that means that there's no sound gap between the notes. And that, remember, is the third note in the scale, the Ga played with the thumb. Then we're moving to index with Ma, the first of the trio of black notes in the middle of the harmonium. That's your Ma. And then the 5th note in the scale, which is Pa, and that's going to be played with your middle finger. And there's Pa. And then moving again, another black note. This time it's Da, and it's played with your ring finger. Finally to Ni as we come underneath with your thumb. And that's the 7th note of the scale. And that's the whole Madhya or middle Saptak or middle register in Aro or Ascent. Okay, this time we're going to play it again, okay, but I'm going to add the higher or top Sa so that we complete a nice balanced register. Okay, Sa Re Ga Ma Pa Da Ni Sa, which will balance everything nicely, and the top Sa is denoted by a dot on the top of it. Okay, that just tells you that we've reached the higher Sa as opposed to the middle one that we're starting on. Okay, so once again, the harmonium, and we're not going to do any singing, we're just going to play the harmonium at a gentle pace. Okay, so starting again with our Sa. And then we're moving to Re, and then Ga, the thumb, and then Ma, index, Pa with the middle, Da with the ring, Ni with the thumb, and then the top Sa. And now we've got the whole balanced register. Okay, this time we're going to sing that whole scale in Ascent or in Aro. And don't worry if your voice doesn't quite reach the high notes yet. That'll come with time and practice. And of course, for those who can, you can sing with me, and that'll be really wonderful. So I'll start again in a nice, relaxed, balanced tempo. This time I'm going to sing the whole scale. So breathing in and Sa and Re and Ga and Ma and Pa and Da and Ni and Sa. Good, and one more time, that whole scale. Middle Sa, to high Sa, going right the way through the register. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, sa. Okay, and a final go, all the way from Sa to Sa in Ascent. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, sa. Fantastic, and that completes the Ascent or Aro of the Madhya Saptak or middle register from Sa to Sa. So, having looked at Aro or Ascent in the Madhya Saptak of all 7 Shuddh or pure notes, let's now look at Avro or descent of those notes. And so now that we've ascended to the top Sa, it's always a good idea to come back to our home base and our starting point again by descending. So we need to come back. Okay, and that's from the higher Sa, as you can see here, and that's denoted by the dot on top all the way back to our home base or our starting point. Okay, and we're going to use exactly the same fingers as we did in Ascent as shown in the brackets. Okay, but just in reverse order. Okay, so let's begin, and remember to put on your high voice at the beginning. Okay, if you can't quite get there, maybe play the Sa and Ni and then join in the singing on the Da, whatever you feel comfortable with, of course. But if you can just about hit that Sa, then you want to be trying to join in and sing with me. Okay, so this time we're going to go straight into the singing, and it's going to be the index finger on the top Sa, okay, and then it's going to be the thumb, ring finger, middle finger, index finger, thumb, middle finger, and then index finger to finish. Okay, so just going to get that sound again. And I'm going to start. Nice deep breath. Sa, next note, Ni, next note, Da, next note, Pa, Ma, next one, Ga, next, Re, and Sa. How many of you thought about singing Sa, Re in descent? Okay, don't worry, loads of students have done that before, but remember you're descending now. So it's Sa, Ni, Da, Pa, Ma, Ga, Re, Sa. Okay, so here we go again. And getting your top Sa with the index finger. So, getting your sound, tuning in, and Sa, Ni, Da, Pa, Ma, Ga, Re, Sa. And one final time. Making sure that you get your fingers in the right place, or the appropriate fingers for the right keys, just as you did in Ascent. Okay, so Sa, Ni, Da, Pa, Ma, Ga, Re, Sa. Great work, and that completes the descent of the Madhya Saptak or middle register of all the Shuddha or pure notes. Okay, so we've done the Ascent now, and also coming back the descent. We've shown so far the position of the 7 should swar from a given starting point sa, and also how to play them in aro and avro, ascent and descent. Now let's put it all together. Okay, so let's now do the aro, avro or ascent descent together in the madhya saptak or middle register of all the should or pure notes of the scale. And the first time we do it, we're just going to play first. We're not going to do any singing, okay? And I'm going to do this by blowing some air into the harmonium first, so that when we play, we're already going to have a sound, okay? So now just one pull of the bellow will have enough air in the harmonium, so that's all you need to do. And we're going to do it at a steady tempo. So I'm going to count in first, and then I'm just going to play the notes in ascent and descent. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you can tell that that's a pure scale, ascent, descent, and this time we're going to do it again at the same tempo, but we're going to sing it. Okay, so if you're ready, get some air into the harmonium and counting in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, re, sa. And one more time, and don't forget to remember the exact fingers this time when you play the ascent and the descent. Here we go again, counting in, same tempo, nice and steady. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, re, sa. Excellent. Well, I hope you remembered the exact fingers and you managed to tune in with your voice, because this last time that we do it, we're actually going to do it twice in a row so we get some flow. But the first time, I'm not going to sing it. I'm just going to play the notes in ascent, descent, and then I'm going to immediately do it again in ascent, descent, aro, avro, but that time I'm going to sing it. Okay, so 2 cycles in succession. Okay, here we go. Getting some air in the harmonium first, counting in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, re, sa. And that is what's known as a scale, or a set of swar or notes in aro and avro, or ascent and descent. And so now for some great tips to get you playing the 7 should swar of the Indian music scale. Okay, so my first piece of advice when you're playing the ascent, descent, or aro, avro of the madhya saptak or middle register is to try to keep your tempo the same and not too fast, but it should be slow, steady and clear. Okay, so the time between each note or swar, or the interval, should remain the same. So let me give you the example that I did in the final parts of the lesson, a little bit like this. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, re, sa. The second thing I would say is try to move your fingers smoothly. That means when you move from one swar to another, try not to leave a gap in the sound between the two notes. Let me show you what I mean. So, let's say for example I was travelling between sa and re. Now what I don't want to do is this. Sa, re. Did you see what I did? It was a kind of jerky movement, coming off the sa, leaving a gap in the sound and then going to the re. Let me show you again what not to do. Sa, re. So you haven't gone smoothly, you haven't transitioned smoothly between the two notes. Let me show you what I mean by a smooth transition. Okay, so like this. Sa, re. And that smooth transition where you don't lose any sound between the two notes as you move between them is because when I'm playing the following note, that's the point that I lift my finger off the previous note. So I play sa, and then as I lift the sa, I move to the re. Okay? So it's a smooth, what I would call a smooth transition. So once again, showing you what to do. Sa, re. And that, I can tell you also, will help your voice to move and between two notes comfortably and in a kind of, like you might think of joined up handwriting as opposed to separate letters. Okay, so you want to practice in that way. And a third point is, remember the position of the swar of the Madhya Saptak. Okay, try to test yourself and see if you know, for example, where ma is or dha is. And well, if you can, that's absolutely great and it will put you in a good position for obviously the coming lessons. And one final point is to do with the bellow. And it's a really important one actually. Try to keep that bellow independent of the time pattern that you're actually playing the notes in. Okay, let me explain that a little bit. I see so many beginners think that one bellow movement is the same as playing one key. This, I can tell you, is a surefire way to wreck your harmonium really quickly because you just don't need that much air to play the swar unless your harmonium is has a real problem with the sustain. And there aren't many harmoniums that play well that you would require to play one bellow movement of the left hand with one note on the right hand. That simply wouldn't be the case. You just have too much air in 99% of the harmoniums that are out there. Okay, so what I mean to say is a steady bellow with a relaxed hand on the keys will make for a great sound whatever harmonium you play. Okay, so what you don't want is that for sa, then go again for re, then again for ga, then again for ma, and look all of a sudden how much air I managed to put inside my harmonium, air that I just simply don't need. Okay, so another way to do it is to get your bellow going absolutely independently, and then you do your scale. That way you can balance the notes as you balance the bellow, and your sound will remain generally at a consistent volume as well. Well, I hope you enjoyed your first lesson of Harmonium and Vocal, a beginner's course. You learned the workings of the harmonium, how to establish a sa, the 7 should swar in the Madhya Saptak or middle scale, and also, more importantly, how to play them in aro and avro, or ascent and descent. In the next lesson, I'll be giving you more information on Saptak and also notation, and a lot more detail on perfecting your technique. I look forward to seeing you in lesson 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa.